Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 15 of Code Geass R2. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So last we left off, Lelouch led an invasion of the cult island, and in doing so, butchered quite a few people. In the end, V2 got away. Lelouch sort of refrained from killing Rolo now. That's still a loose end I'd like to see tied up. And Lelouch has essentially confronted the Emperor one-on-one, which in my mind feels a bit more climactic than this portion of the story necessarily warrants. So I'm sort of prepared for a twist, you know? I feel like this can't be as straightforward as it's presenting itself. The World of C. That's an interesting name, and I'm wondering if we're going to learn a bit more about C2 and what her whole thing is. But I guess more importantly, before that, Lelouch is now confronting the Emperor. And I guess the question is, will this be a fight of Geasses? Because if the Emperor's Geass works the way Lelouch's does, then he can't be affected again. Presumably. Ooh. At least Lelouch is canny enough to know that he's being baited here, and that, you know, maybe he shouldn't recklessly try and use his Geass. I mean, it certainly is his ace in the hole here, but, you know, making eye contact recklessly is probably not a good idea, you know? And I'm wondering if Lelouch was subject to the Geass Chancellor of Jeremiah, you know, surely he would be liable to get Geassed again, right? Like, I think that's something we haven't quite gotten an answer on that I would like to know about. So I guess Jeremiah still has some degree of humanity, which is kind of interesting because, you know, Bartley, he certainly did modify him and mess him up and all that, but I guess Jeremiah is a lot more honorable than, I guess I gave him credit for, you know. Although granted, we haven't seen too much of him, all told. Ooh. So I feel like that's not what Lelouch Geassed him to do, you know? And I'm wondering, like, I feel like the Emperor wouldn't just shoot himself for no reason. There's gotta be a bigger plan, right? Or is that... I guess I missed it if that's what Lelouch did, just like told him to shoot himself and, you know... If that's it, then that's it, right? So, if in fact that is it, then what now? So this is interesting. You know, Kalen, I guess, even in the end, still defending Lelouch. Not that it's seemingly doing her any good with Suzaku here. You know, I mean, it's tough, you know. You kind of cross the line when you start beating women as he's done, but when he's doing that and also dosing her with refrain, like, I don't know. I feel like that's going down a bad path. And at least Suzaku realizes that at the last moment. Now this is interesting, I guess, that C2 and V2 are meeting up, because so far as I know, they've never really interacted that I've seen, or that I can remember. And, ooh. Okay, so it seems like V2 is dying, and this is in part because the Emperor is dead. So it seems like this compact they swore way back when, you know, that was the purpose, or the cause rather, of the immortality. So I guess that begs the question, if there was a contract between the two of them, and since Charles died, V2 died, if Lelouch were to die, would C2 die as well? Although I guess, you know, perhaps it was too good to be true in a sense. Or maybe something else is going on here. You know, there have been a lot of hints at the supernatural, you know, even excluding the Geass. So it's very unfortunate that Lelouch sort of wasted the Geass, I guess. Now, I guess the Emperor is effectively immortal now. Ooh, okay. So that's something. The Emperor has essentially revoked V2's immortality, presumably for his own benefit. And I guess the question here is, could Lelouch do the same thing? You know, I seem to think that this is the case. Okay. So if what the Emperor is saying is true, you know, you give up your Geass, you become immortal, essentially. That's quite interesting indeed. So this is putting implications in my mind that perhaps Lelouch would do the same thing to C2, right? If, you know, he really does want to get revenge on the Emperor, the only way to fight an immortal is to be immortal yourself, you know. Barring, of course, you finding a method to negate that immortality. Oh dear, indeed. So now we have Villetta and Ogi meeting up again, and this is something that was sort of resolved when she shot him, but, you know, he didn't die, so now the question is, what now? Because Villetta doesn't seem to be as entirely hard and straight edge as she made herself out to be. You know, I feel like the fact that she didn't just shoot him already sort of indicates she's grown a little bit soft. And I guess she's even bringing things up. It's like, look, you know, you could kill me too. You know. I think really she's just sort of struggling with the fact that Ogi is not the horrible, evil person she would have believed him to be. And therefore, you know, things are complicated. You know, it can't be resolved into a nice, simple, good versus evil thing. And so now, unfortunately, there are going to be consequences. Unfortunately, it seems like those consequences are going to be borne by Ogi because Lelouch's maid has witnessed this forbidden interaction, so I feel like bad things are going to happen. You know, because Ogi is sort of, he's sort of the heart of the team, you know? Like, maybe not like a moral compass, but like just like a general good guy. And without him, I don't know, I feel like he's foundational in a way. So Lelouch is really going through it here. And this sort of puts me in mind of Instrumentality from Evangelion almost, where he's sort of being confronted here within his mind. And, you know, they're essentially saying, like, look, why are you lying? Why do you need to put on the mask of Zero? Can't you just be yourself? And, you know, beyond that we are the same person. There's you and there's I, there is we. There's only ever been one person throughout all of time. And now C2 is sort of mediating the conversation, which is interesting. You know, she's speaking to the Emperor on familiar terms, which begs the question, why? You know, it seems as though she's been involved with both of them. And I guess now she's finally revealing some big information about herself. Ooh. Okay, that's kind of understandable for an immortal to want to die, just because you've seen everything. You know, there's that phrase, there's nothing new under the sun, so I can imagine C2 would want to die. And, you know, I guess I was kind of right on the money, that the contractor can kill the giver of the Geass. Therefore, only Lelouch is in a position to kill C2, which is what she wants. But the question is, can he do such a thing? Is he willing to do such a thing? You know, I feel like he might be unwilling. You know, she might have to up the ante in order to sort of strong-arm him into doing it, you know? And, you know, putting two and two together like that, I've got a real bad feeling about Nunnally, you know? Because if there's one thing that would push Lelouch over the edge, it's probably something happening to Nunnally. Because even with Shirley dying, Lelouch didn't snap and kill Rollo, as well he should have. Alright, so C2's really doing her best to tempt him here. Like, look, if you kill me, you will have the power to fight the Emperor on even terms. And plus, it's also what I want. So, you know, kind of a compelling argument. Probably the most compelling argument you can make without dragging other people into this. But I don't know if Lelouch is necessarily willing to kill her just for that, you know? And I'm wondering, with all this talk of removing codes and becoming immortal and all that, is Charles essentially V2 now? You know, if Lelouch were to kill C2, he would become immortal, he would essentially take on her place, and he would have to dole out a contract in order to die. Interesting indeed. So, you know, I guess immortality is on the table here in a very real way. And, you know, I do find it a little conspicuous that we're cutting over to Nunnally here, and she's talking about the plan that, you know, Euphemia died for. I don't know, this seems like it might not be a good thing we're cutting to Nunnally. I feel like something bad's gonna happen. If not right now, very soon, because she's also sort of flexing her authority as the Governor General. And, you know, the powers that be don't like it when a figurehead does stuff that's outside their remit. And, man, you know, Nunnally, I feel like she's too innocent for her own good, because she is a figurehead. And she's saying, no, I am the Governor General. I will do what is right for these people. And, you know, it's a group of people the Britannians don't particularly care for. So I feel like things are going to get bad. So Lelouch has really covered his tracks, it seems, by Geassing the entire, you know, information department to sort of feed Suzaku lies and say, like, look, everything's normal, don't worry about it. Hopefully, this is the lead up to Lelouch just killing Rollo. I mean, I feel like we might not be so lucky this episode, but you never know. Ooh. Okay, so it seems like Nunnally is doing solid work for Area 11, sort of updating them to a satellite rather than, I don't know what they'd be called, a protectorate or a colony or a territory. Ooh. So Suzaku's loyal to the Emperor, and he knows that if Lelouch regains his memories, Nunnally is the bargaining chip. And I really hope, ooh, yeah, okay, he's showing some trepidation that, like, something's going on here, and he's not, on board with it necessarily. You know, that is something that Lelouch is gone, essentially. And I feel like this is probably because he's descending into C2's memories or something. Some weird metaphysical thing. And I'm wondering if this is her, because in grayscale though it is, it seems like she wouldn't necessarily have green hair. You know, I'm wondering if the green hair is sort of indicative of her immortality or a byproduct or something like that. Oh, you know what? Maybe, oh. Okay. So this is how it all started with C2 then. Right? Is she... No, you know what? She's the nun, isn't she? Oh dear. So it seems like C2 has a long history of doing stuff and evidently not being successful. And I guess the question is, yeah, I figured this would likely be the case. Ogi sort of sacrifices himself to save Villetta, probably with fatal consequences. Ooh. That's an interesting Geass that C2 made. The Geass to be loved. Which, you know, it's one thing if your Geass is to control people, but to control people in a rigid way, that's, Yeah, you know, it's not good, you know? Like, no good will come from that, because if everyone is effectively Geassed, you can't trust people, right? Okay, so C2 here has both eyes with the symbol. You know, we know that one eye with the symbol means you've used it too much. But I'm wondering what the deal is here. Like, does that happen when you revoke the contract and kill someone? Like, is that when the second eye takes over? Because it seems like she has not killed her contractor yet. Man. So it's, kind of unfortunate that C2 has been told to her face that she's been tricked into this. Because, like, yeah, you know, it's probably not good to live forever if you don't want to, but, is it really so hard to trick someone else in turn? I feel like it shouldn't be, because, like, we're talking, like, C2 is in the Middle Ages, and we're in, like, roughly present day. So that's, you know, 500 years. That's a long time, but not, like, so long that you sort of cease to relate to humans. Although, you know, I guess C2 does have a pretty reasonable claim for being so unhappy if everyone she's ever known has died before her. Like, that would get pretty wearying, you know? Like, I can imagine feeling remarkably weary after something like that. So, I guess it's kind of interesting that Lelouch and the Emperor are in competition for C2. And I feel like the Emperor having immortality. I'm wondering if something else will happen here. Some other, I don't know, exigent property of all these Geasses and stuff. And I guess Lelouch is asking the pertinent question, like, why didn't you force immortality on me? And, you know, you do have to wonder, right? Like, did C2 fall in love with him? I feel like surely that must be the answer, right? Because, like, you can't condemn someone to the hell you live in if you really like him, you know? So Lelouch is, really going for it, I guess, destroying the shrine. Like, I don't know if the shrine necessarily holds anything other than symbolic meaning, but, you know, if it's like the one bit of solid land in this entire floating void, maybe you shouldn't start blowing it up. Oh dear indeed. You know, it's never good when something just sort of like rapidly expands and then shrinks again. Even if that was like a simulation or something. Ooh, you know, that seems like it was a weapon invented by Nina. You know, she has a real habit of making worse and worse weapons. You know, it's never a good thing when you say war will change, and that it's called Damocles is no good either. You know, the sword of Damocles, the sword hanging by a thread over your head that will kill you, and you don't know when, like, you know, that's not a good thing. So, something has changed here. You know, C2 seems to have reverted to herself from however many 100 years ago. And I guess in so doing that, she's no longer the same person, much to Lelouch's, you know, horror, I guess. Man, very interesting indeed. I wonder if that means Lelouch is now immortal. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.